Hello, hello, my fellow citizens, fellow Liberians. I'm here today to speak to you on few issues of national concern. We have been watching, we have been sitting, we have been observing the electoral process in Liberia, and it has come to our attention that we have reached a critical juncture in our electoral history and in our national history. As a matter of introduction, my name is L.Varnie B. Mame. I'm a lifelong advocate for social justice, freedom, peace, transparency, accountability, and all of the tenets of democracy. And so, fellow citizens, today I've decided to come and let you know that we are not going to be silent in this runoff. As a matter of fact, the fundamental question is, during our election, did we have choices? Good choices? The answer is yes. We had a lot of options, a lot of good choices. However, the Liberian voters decided to basically ignore some of the best options we ever had. And I will not be calling names, but you all know that some of the options we had are better than the options we now have. That being the Unity Party and the CDC. However, we cannot remain silent, and we have to make a choice, because bad things happen when good people keep silent. As worse or as bad as our situation is, considering the two options we now have, which happens to be the Unity Party and the CDC, which of course I would never have chosen any of the two, yet still, when it comes to a decision between the two worst options, we still have to make a choice, considering the fundamental argument of lesser of two evils. Now, considering the lesser of two evil factor, or the lesser of two evil theory, I would like to remind you, first of all, that I am not supporting the re-election of Josh Weah. Neither am I supporting the election of Joseph Boakai. And to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of problem with Joseph Boakai, nor do I have a lot of problem with Josh Weah as individuals. But in terms of politics and policies of the Unity Party and the CDC, both parties disappointed, to a larger extent, the Liberian voters. By this I mean, you all know, the Liberian people put their hopes and aspiration in the Unity Party when Ellen Johnson took power, expecting that she would have fought corruption, she would have empowered young people, she would have led the country down the road where we're going to have concession agreement benefiting the Liberian people. To the contrary, and to our utmost dismay, almost all of those concessions were counterproductive to the wins and aspirations of the Liberian voters and the Liberian populace. And so it gave rise to the election of George Weah. George Weah became president out of this frustration of the Liberian people. He became president out of the frustration against the Unity Party for their lack of seriousness to fight corruption, where you have Madam Salif and her family members taking the helm of power, Robert Salif, the de facto president or the de facto prime minister, dishing out cash all over the place, influencing politics and policies, avoiding the regular system of governance, and just bastardize the process of governance. And it led to the frustration of Liberians, and they voted them out. And I was a campaigner to ensure that the Unity Party never got re-elected in 2017. Our intentions were not to see a CDC government come to power and start to do almost exactly the same things, or maybe worse than the same things we had experienced during the regime of Madam Salif or the Unity Party, of which Joseph Boakai was the vice president. And so the best thing I can say right now is that both the Unity Party and the CDC are responsible for the frustration and the disenchantment of the Liberian voters. However, these two political evils have come again to our, what I would say, come before us for our judgment. And because they are the only two political parties left in the election, we have to make a choice between the two. But before I go there, I would like to let you know that those both political parties, when it comes to arrogance, there are arrogance on both sides. The guys in the Unity Party and the guys in the CDC, we found a lot of arrogance in their behavior. We find a lot of arrogant individuals in both parties. But worst of the two parties is the Unity Party. I can tell you that for sure because we dealt with them. I'm not saying they don't have arrogant people in the CDC, but when it comes to the level of arrogance between the two political parties, I will give it to the Unity Party. They got much more arrogant individuals who feel that they know everything. Most of them whose school fees were paid for by the government at the time. Madam Salif used to pay their school fees. They would go abroad, and when they come from Cornell or they come from Georgetown and other places with their masters, they become so arrogant to the point where they have a disdain for every other person who did not go there. They had this superiority complex. They were so boastful. If they did something wrong and you even try to correct them, you even try to bring it to their attention, the people are jealous. This group of jealous people, angry people, young people who are jealous and they are envious against us. Why would we envy you? Somebody else pay your school fees. You didn't struggle for your own school fees. You didn't do any struggle. You got your school fees paid by the government, paid for by the government. Our taxpayers' money. We pay your school fees. And you go to Georgetown, you go to Cornell, because they wanted to compromise you. They wanted to keep you quiet. You come back, you start to turn against your very comrades who you both struggle for the same agenda to ensure that the masses were liberated. But when you became a carpetbagger, when you started to eat crumbs falling from the table of the oligarchs or the elites, then you turn against your brothers. And you say they are jealous, they are envious. Those are some of the things we experienced. The PDF, they formed themselves into an organization called the PDF. Group of brilliant guys, I won't deny, they are very brilliant. Exceptionally, some of them were exceptionally brilliant. However, when they became compromised, they were tampered with by the regime, by the fact that they sent them abroad to go and study. When they came back, they saw no equal. They were very disrespectful, very arrogant, very, I don't even know the terminology. My comrade Pacheswa would say they became boisterous and postery, even though I don't know what is the word. But yeah, so these are some of the things that we experience. But however, it's not lost on the CDC too, because we have a lot of group of seditionists who are no different from those we experience in the Unity Party. So, but I know who I can give on the scale of 1 to 10, Unity Party got 9 and CDC probably got 7 when it comes to being very arrogant and think that they know all, or they got this superiority complex. Second thing is corruption. When it comes to corruption, the Unity Party was extremely corrupt. But their corruption, they did it like a white-collar kind of corruption, and their dictatorship was like a white-collar dictatorship. You can imagine the number of protests that we had, I as an individual, from Soup, leading the charge. We almost every week we had a separate protest or different protest for something in government, either corruption or the dismissed group of, like Bravo Kebe just went ahead and dismissed a lot of people from the GSE. We call it Kebe's missile. We had to confront the regime for tuition reduction at the University of Liberia, which was a constitutional right. We had to confront them to have buses. We had to confront them for free and fair and transparent elections. We had to confront them almost every day for something to ensure that we had good governance in the country, accountability, transparency, every day, almost every day. When it came to the CDC that told us that they were coming to fight corruption, the first thing I told George Weah and his colleagues that they needed to declare their asset. The first step towards fighting against corruption was to ensure that you set an example as a leader, as a president, especially a young president, in whom we put our trust. The first step towards fighting corruption was to ensure that you declare your asset so that your junior comrades, your able lieutenants down the line will have had the first fear. Say, if the president declares his asset, we have to be careful. But you didn't declare your asset, you drag your feet. The next thing we saw was you started building condos, houses, duplexes that you didn't have the opportunity or you didn't have the resources to do before you became president. And so everybody knew to some extent that this was not a perfect transaction. And as a result of that, for some of us who resisted the Unity Party, expecting that something positive was going to come out of the CDC, we started to get discouraged. We started to become disappointed. And I started to call some colleagues who believe in me. I told them, I said, comrades, the president is proceeding wrongly. He has started to disappoint the Liberian voters. And he has to declare his asset. Besides, it is not a good optics for you to come to power within few months of your presidency and you start to build houses for yourself. It's not a good optics. It's not a good sign. No matter what, you should have waited. You should have sat and structured the country in a way where you fight corruption as a young man. You create jobs. You try to develop the country instead of thinking about yourself, because that's a selfish agenda to come to power in a few months and start to develop your real estate. It shows to what extent you did not take our decision seriously, our decision to oust the Unity Party and bring you to power. You did not take that decision seriously. However, we know that George Weah is reckless, but Joseph Boakai and the Unity Party, they are just unpredictable. The agenda, we don't even know. The reason I say that is because they are coming with a vice presidential running mate who is the godson of a war criminal, of a man who committed atrocities against the Liberian people, a Prince Johnson, a Yerugbe, whom I am aware killed a lot of people that I know of in Bon Mines. I was in Bon Mines, I was a kid, but I knew. We went to the bus stop, we saw the people that he slaughtered. Mass murder. This is a guy, a tribal lord, who only believes in Nimba County, who only believes that leadership belongs to or is an inherent property or right of a certain group of people from a certain county, which I believe is wrong. And he has said it on many occasions that it is time for Nimba County. Why I agree that Nimba County, being a populous county, will make sense if the person who is coming out of Nimba as a presidential running mate or a vice presidential running mate will be a good idea. Why I believe that it will be a good idea if the person coming was on the basis of their service to the country, on the basis of their fight for human rights, on the basis of their respect for the rule of law. But if you are coming to tell us that it is time for Nimba only because you have a beef to settle with the people from the south, no, we cannot give you authority, my brother. The thing is, Prince Johnson does not deserve a micro inch near the corridors of power or near the presidency of our country. I don't care if the Nimbayans decide to make him senator for life. It's up to them. But for the presidency that we all have a stake, and for some of us from the human rights background who have fought for the rule of law, for democracy, for the justice for the victims of atrocities, we have been fighting for human rights. And we will not sit there and allow a perpetrator of violence against our people to come and produce a vice presidential running mate with a sole motive of taking power. Some of you don't know Prince Johnson. Prince Johnson has been in the business for a very long time. He's a cunning guy. Same thing he did when they left from Libya and got trained. He, Charles Taylor, and the rest of the commandos, when they came to Liberia, next thing you saw, Prince Johnson takes advantage. He took advantage of a situation, and he always does it. He takes advantage of every violence or every situation, unfavorable situation, to showcase himself, to hijack power, or to bring himself to prominence. And that is how he formed the INDP-FL, the Independent National Patriotic Front of Liberia. And then he started to wage war. When he got to Monrovia, he took advantage of another situation. Connie, again, he used his ingenuity and he was able to capture Doe. And he did not just capture Doe, in the presence of the entire world, on camera, he murdered, slaughtered, butchered a sitting president. For the first time in our nation's history, for people like us, small kids like us in the 90s, we were kids, to see the gruesome murder of an elected president, or even whether he was elected properly or not, but the leader of a country. Prince Johnson did that. According to him, he came to revenge. Exactly what he came to do. Now, this is the guy who is coming back for a second revenge, because he did not have his way at that time, because if he left with Prince Johnson alone, that wasn't enough. And he has been in the fight to seek revenge. He has lost several opportunities to be able to get to where he wanted to go, but this is the best opportunity, the best shot at the presidency that Prince Johnson has ever had, to go and bring Jeremiah Kun, a handpicked vice president by Prince Johnson, a godson of Prince Johnson, Jeremiah Kun, to go alongside Joseph Boakai, and we will go and vote for that individual, so that just in the instance where, in the most likely event where Joseph Boakai will become incapacitated, the next thing, an inexperienced Jeremiah Kun will automatically ascend to the presidency. And who will dictate to Jeremiah Kun? Who will run the show? Who will be the godfather? You already know the answer. Prince Johnson. The very guy who some members of our society from the Southeast have a serious problem with. And they are watching. They are not only watching, but they are planning. Just because they're not saying it doesn't mean it's not happening. These people are waiting for the moment when Prince Johnson will get so close to the presidency that it will become uncomfortable for them. And the revenge agenda will start to be, they will start to bring the revenge agenda to bear on the Liberian population. And that's when you will know whether the people from the Southeast were paying attention or not. Because they are paying attention. They are observing. They are planning. But if we play fool and allow a Prince Johnson made vice president to get close to the presidency and Joseph Boakai becomes incapacitated by any means, whether natural means, whether supernatural means, whether artificial means, whether man-made means, whether through health, or I don't want to wish anything negative on Joseph Boakai because he could be my father or grandfather. But anything could happen at his terminal age. That age is not the age where you can be and expect to live longer on earth than the time you have already lived. It is by grace that Joseph Boakai is still around and still kicking. But the clock is ticking against the old man, especially where he has put himself in a situation where he's running for president. It's a Herculean task for an old man like that to run the presidency. It's not an easy thing. Young people like us, we got 5 responsibilities. Sometimes we wake up in the morning, we're not even willing to get up from our bed because of the challenge the responsibility has placed on us. And then how much more of a person who is that terminal, who is old, at that old, leading the country as a president. You can imagine what toll it would take on him and what would be the outcome. And then you want a Jeremiah Kpankun who is inexperienced. I don't even know what leadership experience he has to become a president. Apart from being a businessman, he became a representative in Nima County, which of course we know he dollarized the process. Senator against senatorial candidate, he became senator, which of course we know he influenced the process greatly by cash, used cash violence. And so, with such a person coming to become president of our country, in the event where something happened to Joseph Boakai, it's a disaster. It's a constitutional disaster. It's going to be a constitutional crisis. Not only that, it's going to be a constitutional crisis, but it's also going to be a political crisis, where Prince Johnson will now see himself as the president, the kingmaker. He'll be roaming around, misbehaving. These people committed atrocities against us. The reward for them is not our presidency or our vice presidency or any leadership position in our country. No way. This is the reward for bad behavior. Somebody killed a lot of our citizens, and the reward for that behavior is to give him the vice presidency, is to give him power, to anger the other group of people on the other side, at which time when their anger raised to the level where they will decide to use violence, it will affect the entire nation like it happened in the case of Charles Taylor. You think we're stupid? You think we don't know what happened? When Charles Taylor brought the war, and Ulimo, their target, when Charles Taylor and Prince Johnson brought the war, their targets were the Crown and the Mandingos and any of their associates or their co-conspirators, or their associates or their friends. They targeted Mandingo people, they targeted Crown people, they targeted any other person that was associated with them. And I think the Congo people too, to some extent. So when this group of people saw Charles Taylor with his group of violent soldiers and Prince Johnson, they didn't sit there. Alhaji Jiffy Kroma went to the bushes, took guns and came back. When they split into Ulumo K and Ulumo J, who did they affect? It affected us. Us, the Liberian people, the young people at the time. For 7 years, they fought. And Charles Taylor became president in 2000. It was 1997. When Charles Taylor became president in 1997, guess what happened? Those who were opposed to him in the bushes saw it as an affront for the men who they fought 7 years against to become president. They said, no, it's not going to happen. They went back to the bushes. And they came back, and we experienced a combination of 2 wars that accumulated to 14 years of civil war that took away our youth, that took away our vision, that took away our prosperity, that took away our future. Today, many of us who should have been scientists, many of us who should have been doctors, many of us who should have been the best among us, find ourselves today, what? Pushing wheelbarrow, driving bus driver, begging for a handout from people all around the world, cleaning poo-poo, toting boxes. Those people destroy our future. The calamity they brought against our country and against our future is something we still have not rescued ourselves from. And now you want to bring these people close to power, and Jeremiah Kmankun and Prince Johnson will be smoking their happy pipe and reliving their glory days in our executive mansion. And you think the other group of people from the Southeast will sit down and allow it to happen? You really think so? If you really think so, then you need to remind yourself about what happened in 1997 when Charles Taylor had fought the Prince Johnson. Had fought.
Now I've got the host of Pod Save America and Pod Save the World, Tommy Vitor. Tommy, thanks for coming on.
So, sorry.
Also the co-host of Liberal Tears, the show we do together on YouTube. For God's sake.
Sorry, 1 minute. Sorry, let me just shut this thing up.
That's right.
Let me shut this thing up. Okay. So you think, sorry about that. You think Prince Johnson becoming the producer of the vice president will not anger those from the Southeast? I don't even want to call their tribe. I don't even want to call their name because there are so many. You think it will not anger them? No, you're wrong. And so for this reason, I thought to bring it to your attention that we are at a crossroads. We are at a critical juncture in our nation's history. It is time for us to make a very uncomfortable but critical decision. I will agree with some of you, or most of you, that the CDC and George Weah underperformed in terms of leadership, in terms of providing the basic social services for the transformation of our country. However, the Unity Party and Joseph Boakai were no exception in terms of disappointing us. Because had it been that Joseph Boakai and the Madam Salif regime were going to ensure that there were massive infrastructure development, massive youth empowerment, and all of the necessary basic social services to transform our country would have been put into place, we had no reason to even contemplate the election of George Weah. But we were frustrated. We were disappointed. After 14 years of our wasted years, our best years, to come and see a government that received so much goodwill from the international community in terms of foreign direct investment under Madam Salif and Joseph Boakai Unity Party-led government, to go to that route and disappoint us, and they come back and tell us they squandered those opportunities of ours when our hopes were so high and our aspirations and all our dreams were placed in their hands and giving them the leadership, and they came back to tell us, oh, sorry, we squandered your opportunity. Nevertheless, George Weah was given the opportunity to come and make the difference, only for him to underperform, perform dismally, very dismally. Those little things he did, they are commendable. You know, when people do commendable things, you commend them. George Weah did a lot of good things, and I can give it to him. In my opinion, considering what Madam Salif received in terms of foreign direct investment, in terms of international goodwill, if George Weah had received such an investment, I want to believe Liberia will be far better than what it was under Madam Salif. Clear cut. Because with the meager resources he has been able to get, we see that the university is making a lot of improvements. Things that we fought for, they are coming to light. They've told us that they could not afford to pay school fees and tuitions, and today a lot of university students go to school tuition free. Weah's fee is being paid. Those people from the Madam Salif regime told us, and the Joseph Boakai regime told us, that there was never a possibility for those things to happen. But we see them happening under George Weah. Taking our government offices from private buildings to buildings owned by the government. And I can't name everything, but there have been some improvements. However, we are disappointed that youth empowerment, youth employment, opportunities for the young people, especially when it comes to drug proliferation. The government of the CDC has more to do for the Liberian people, more to do in terms of fighting the drug proliferation in the country, more to do to ensure that there's youth employment, more to do to ensure that there's infrastructure development, roads, construction, more to do in terms of liberating the masses from poverty, disease, and illiteracy. You have so much to do, and you have so much support from the young people. Do not allow this opportunity to be squandered. You understand? And so I would like to say today, in my closing statement, that if the choice is between a united party and a CDC, a united party on one hand that squandered 68 concession agreements, and a CDC that had basically not half as much concession agreements, if we have to make a choice between a united party that had so much international goodwill, and on the other hand, a CDC government that had little or international goodwill, if we have to make a choice between a CDC led by George Weah and a unity party led by Joseph Boakai, whom I believe is carrying a vice president who is essentially the godson of a warlord, I will have to respectfully disagree with any vote going to Joseph Boakai and the Unity Party. Even though this is being done with a heavy heart, because the CDC also did not impress me. They underperformed in terms of delivering the basic social services for the Liberian people. But when it comes to a choice between the two, I, as a person from a human rights background, where we fight for the rights of victims, where we fight for the rule of law, where we fight for or fight against atrocities committed against our people, violence and killings and atrocities were carried out against our people, and the same Prince Johnson is resurfacing through Jeremiah Kmankun as vice president. There's a risk factor that we need to be afraid of and pay serious attention to. Because if these things happen in the future, we'll have ourselves to blame. Because it's like putting the sand in the air and putting your eye on it and hoping that when it hit your eye, it will not affect your eye. That's the definition of stupidity and insanity or inanity. So this is Prince Johnson coming back around. We have to remind ourselves that it has happened before and it will happen again if we are not careful. That if it happened in 1997 when Charles Taylor became president, after defeating the other rebels, they saw it as an affront and went back to the bushes and came back for him. The same thing will happen if Prince Johnson gets anywhere close to the corridors of power or the presidency. Those people who were opposed to him will most definitely go back to the bushes and try to get rid of him. And it will be the catastrophe we are not willing to embrace. And so, my fellow citizens, let us be wise. Let us remember. Let us think twice. Let us be sober and reflect on what has passed before and what is yet to come. It is our responsibility, like one of our leaders said, Amika Cabral, that every generation has a mission. You either fulfill it or you betray it. This is our mission. Our mission is to ensure that this election does not go the way of those who committed atrocities against the Liberian people. We ensure that the election is not won by those who perpetrated violence against our mothers, against our brothers and sisters, raped, maimed, amputated, butchered our people, killed our president, murdered, sliced his ears, and in the face of the world before camera. We cannot allow Prince Johnson to get anywhere near the presidency, not a micro inch around the presidency of our nation. It will be a stain, a deep stain, a dark stain on the future of our country and future generations. So go and vote wisely. Vote not because you hate Joseph Boakai. Vote against the United Party because it will be a disaster. It will be a risky train, not a rescue train, that we'll be voting for. It will be a rascal and a risky train to vote for. So go and vote against the Unity Party. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm telling you who to vote against. So when you go to the ballot box, remember this, that this ticket has on it someone who was produced by a warlord, a tribal lord, a man who committed atrocities, a man who has human rights violations still on his hands, the killing of our president, the butchering of our president before the world on camera, and still has a mind to come and revenge. The scores are not settled for Prince Johnson. He continues to say that Nimba County must take... In fact, he has no regret for whatever happened during the war. He has never apologized. He thinks he's right. And so for this reason, we have to resist these kind of people and not reward them with our leadership or anything close to our leadership. So go and vote against Prince Johnson. By extension, go and vote against the Unity Party. And if, for any reason, I hope I'm wrong, that the Unity Party wins the election, let's give them a chance. But hopefully, and in the most likely event, they're not going to win. This election, I've seen elections come and go. I can tell what's going to happen when it's about to happen. This election is George Weah's to lose, if you know what that means. George Weah is supposed to win the election unless he decides not to win it, because he has the advantage. The Liberian people will give him a second chance. And it is his responsibility to leave a legacy for those ahead of him. For some of us who are young people, young indigenous Liberian aspiring to lead our country in the right direction. If he leaves a better legacy, it's going to be good for posterity. If he leaves a bad legacy, it's going to haunt us for a long time. And that is the reason why those people who we consider as African American, no discrimination, but at a certain time in our nation's history, we saw the Americo-Liberians as the problem of our country. And so any other person who came to power as an African American or an Americo-Liberian, we resisted them. Because from the time our nation was founded up to the 60s or 70s, they were in power. And where did the country go? To nowhere. And so that is the legacy that was left behind by Americo-Liberian leaders of the past. So if George Weah is coming to power as an indigenous son of the soil, he better mind, George Weah, you better mind, because the legacy you will leave behind, it will haunt us for generations to come. And so I am begging you to leave a legacy that will pave the way for leaders from your generation, because I'm not talking about the Americo-Liberian and the indigenous Liberian divide. I'm talking about the young people. We as young people saw George Weah as a way to change the trajectory of leadership in our country. Put our trust in him, and we gave him a first chance. He underperformed. We are about to take a serious risk only because Joseph Boakai chose the wrong running mate. And the worst group of people who you could ever imagine surrounding Joseph Boakai. It is because of that that we will have to swallow the bitter pill of George Weah. But the onus is on him, George Weah, to ensure that he changed this narrative, change this trajectory, and make Liberia not a perfect place. We don't expect perfection, but a better place. That a legacy will be left behind for generations of ours, young people, to come to power or to come to leadership and have the respect that we deserve. Because one of our kind came and left a better legacy for us to live on and let the nation thrive. The motherland, we should never allow to fail. Let us do everything we can to resist a ticket that has on it the blood of our nation. Let us resist that ticket that has on it a warlord made vice presidential candidate. Let us resist and reject the Unity Party. Thank you very much. May God bless you, and may God bless Liberia. And we look forward to the coming days and a successful, peaceful, transparent election for our country. May God bless you all. Thank you very much. Bye.